In 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And welcome everyone to this episode of the Real Leaders Podcast. 2 and 1. And welcome everyone to this episode of the Real Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Edwards. Joining us today is a man of many talents, Mr. Michael Franti. Michael, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks. It's awesome to be here with you, Kevin. And everybody who's tuning and listening right now, welcome. And for all of you who are watching in real time, if you got questions, fire away, and Kevin and I'll go back and forth, just talking and maybe answering a few of your questions on the spot. So thanks for being here.
Michael, I've never picked up an instrument, but I know how to riff on a podcast. There's no doubt about that. So let's talk real quick. So a man of many talents. You're a musician. You're a filmmaker. I know you're a basketball player. You played at USF. I mean, when you were a child growing up, what were you most interested in?
I was most interested in sports, to be honest. I grew up in a very musical family. All my brothers and sisters played instruments, and my mom played organ in the church. And I didn't play any instruments, and I wanted to be a professional basketball player. I was obsessed with it. But at a certain point, I realized that part of my obsession with basketball was just to be away from my family life, which was kind of difficult. And being out on the court just gave me a way to be away from the house, but it also gave me a way to do something that I felt like I could do, like I could excel at. And so when I got to the University of San Francisco and was playing there, my dorm room was right above the campus radio station, and I used to listen to the music that was coming out of there. And 1 hour would be punk rock hour, then reggae hour, then hip hop hour, then something else. Then at 6 o'clock, it became Chinese news every day. And so I started becoming obsessed with sharing what my beliefs were, what was in my heart through music. And eventually I found myself to the Haight-Ashbury district in San Francisco, and started hanging out with a lot of musicians and artists and creative people, and that became my first entry into music.
So, Michael, how old were you then when you first picked up an instrument?
I was 18.
18.
First started playing an instrument, and it was just a piece of metal that I was banging on. Because my first group, the Beatniks, we just used pieces of metal in a junkyard, and we'd bang on it, and then we'd kind of like Blue Man Group style percussion, but before the Blue Man Group was around. And then we just do our poetry on top of it. And that were the first performances. And then I started taking those sounds and sampling them and making drum beats out of them using samplers and electronic instruments. And then it wasn't until around 2000 that I actually started playing the acoustic guitar, and that became my really instrument of choice. And the reason I love the acoustic guitar is because I always wanted to have an instrument that I could play in a stadium in front of 20,000 people, or play it on a street corner for 10 people, or just play it for myself alone in my bedroom. And the guitar is the most portable of instruments that you can still sing along with. Like, you can play a flute, but it's really hard to sing and play a flute at the same time. So guitar is a good one to carry with you and to be able to share with people.
It's a lot of amazing and talented musicians, I feel like, kind of go through a similar unconventional route like that. Like, were you self-taught? Like, how did you learn to play and sing so well?
Well, I went on this trip to Cuba in 1997, and there was about 25 American and European artists, and we were collaborating with 25 Cuban artists. And at night they would have a guitar, and everybody would be sitting like at a picnic table outdoors and smoking Cuban cigars and drinking Cuban rum and passing the bottle and passing a guitar around in a circle. And there'd be like Mick Fleetwood would be there, and Gladys Knight was there, and the Indigo Girls, and Peter Frampton. All these amazing artists were there, and all these incredible Cuban artists, and they were singing these wonderful boleros off into the Spanish, moonlight, and they passed the guitar to me, and I didn't know how to play it, so I just flipped it over on the back, and I started playing like a beat, like, and started rapping to it, and it just didn't come off, because there's something about the thing of like chords and voice together that makes this magic. Even if you don't understand the words, the language of the words, you understand like the feeling of the melody. And so I felt like, man, I got to learn the guitar. And so I went home and I bought a guitar, and I put it in the corner of my bedroom, leaned it against the wall, and it sat there for like 3 years. I didn't play it. I was always like, there's that guitar. It's calling my name. I got to get to it. And I took one guitar lesson, and the guitar teacher was like, all right, here's the lesson. Next week, I want you to practice, come back and show me what you learned. And so I come back the next week, and I hadn't practiced once. And so he's like, look, man, if you're not going to practice, it ain't going to work. So I go, oh, I'll practice next week. I'll see you next week. And then the lesson was on a Tuesday or something, Monday, and I had to call him. I was like, bro, I didn't practice.
Yeah.
So I knew that method wasn't going to work for me. So finally, I bought a CD-ROM. I mean, this tells you when it was. It's before like DVDs. I bought a CD-ROM, and it was called How to Play Guitar. And I could put it on whenever I wanted to practice, which should be like 3 or 4 in the morning. I'd put this CD-ROM on. It would just be like, here's a G chord. And then you go to a D chord, and I could see the fingering of the.
Interesting.
And I just go back and forth. And I found that when I wanted to play, having that ability to have the teacher be there when I was ready to take it in was the key for me. And it's so great now. Like if you want to learn guitar, you just go on YouTube and you're like, teach me the new One Direction song. Teach me to play Beethoven. Teach me to play whatever. And you can learn anything on guitar on YouTube now. And so it's a different time that we're in. But it took me a while to get my hand around it. And then even still, like it wasn't natural for me. Music has never been like a natural thing for me. Mm-hmm. Speaking what's in my heart and being, really focused on what I have to say, what's breaking my heart, or what's making me feel really, empowered or want to celebrate in life. Those things are easier for me to share, but the actual physical practice of doing it never has come easy for me.
Now, you also said beforehand, like basketball was kind of an escape, and that's why maybe you got good at that. You liked that. Was music an escape? And if it was, like what were you running from?
Well, music is both something that has brought me into my heart more, and it's something that's also allowed me to escape from things. Mm. And what I mean by that is that when I write songs, I always write from what breaks my heart. But the actual practice of being a traveling, working musician, it brings you away from your family. It brings you away from, the real world, quote unquote, things that you've got to deal with every day, because every night you're in a different city and different town, and you're going from place to place, and you go on stage and play, and then you come off stage and you're there in the middle of the night with whatever you didn't deal with from the day before emotionally. And so I feel like my journey as an artist over the 30 plus years that I've done it has been to not just run away from what it is that I'm feeling, the pain of the youth that I grew up in, or things that I've experienced as an adult, but to really use music as a catharsis and as a way to write, to heal, and then in hopes that it would touch other people in the way that those emotions hit for me when I felt them. Example for that.
Yeah, go ahead.
If you don't mind. Like for example, recently we were trying to, the pandemic hit, and we were here in Bali at Soulshine. We were leading a yoga retreat. We were supposed to go out on tour on April 15th. The first show was at Dallas Cowboys Stadium, opening for Kenny Chesney. We're doing this massive tour, and the tour gets canceled, and the first month of the tour gets canceled. They're like, we're postponing the tour to May. And I'm like, May? We got to wait all the way to May? Oh my God. And now, here we are almost a year later, and we haven't done one show in all that time. 175 shows are canceled. And that's how, as a family, we earn our living, is through performing live. And so suddenly I became an unemployed artist, and I was like, how am I going to keep the lights on? But more than just keeping the lights on physically, paying the light bill, but how do I keep the lights on in my heart as we're going through quarantine, as we're going through all the stress, the worry, the concerns about our health, about what's happening in the world. And, we had our moment, my wife Sarah and I, where we just kind of like, huddled together and broke down and cried for a second. And then we were like, all right, well, let's figure out a way to get through this, and let's go for it. And so I wrote this song that was about that. And so the way I write songs is I just come up with a melody and some chords. So I started just playing a few chords. Na 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 na. Na, 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 na. So I thought that sounded kind of like a nice little melody. So then I put words to it. So I'm trying to keep the lights on. I'm trying to keep the lights on. I'm trying to keep the lights on. The days get darker, the nights get long, and I just keep waking up to the same old song, and that same voice in my head is always running around. Whoa, now the clock tick-tock and the whole world stops, but the bills I got, they just keep on piling up. Trying to keep up, keeping up, but it's kind of getting me down. See, I'm just 1 in 7 billion, trying to keep the lights on, trying to keep the lights on. I'm trying to keep the lights on, I'm trying to keep the lights on. Oh, na 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 na. Well, you and me are the same, you see. We got big, big plans, big, big dreams, and I'm never gonna let the world ever take them away. Whoa, now you and me and the whole family, we're gonna fill our bus with the love we got in us. Pull it out of the driveway and fly it away. See, I'm just 1 in 7 billion, trying to keep the lights on, trying to keep the lights on, trying to keep the lights on. Trying to keep the... And in the bridge of the song, I try to solve the problem. Whoa, my heart is heavy, but whoa, I'm in heaven like whoa. My heart is heavy, but whoa, I'm in heaven with you. Trying to keep the lights on. I'm trying to keep the lights on. Trying to keep the lights on. Keep the lights on.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. I'm glad you picked up that guitar in your bedroom that was in the corner for 3 years.
Thanks, bro.
Just listening to those lyrics, I feel like, you speak for so many people that are thinking those things, having those conversations, going through hard times. Like, do you feel like with a platform like that, like, do you ever feel like obligated to like express those things, or is it more of like a release valve to like get that just out of you?
It's a release valve, but I do feel a responsibility, and that responsibility doesn't come from being a musician. It just comes from being a human being. That I really have always felt, it's just the way that I was raised, that you should try to get to your growing edge every day. And this is something that my parents both encouraged me. It's like, get to your growing edge, try to figure out a way that you can be better. Like if you're a basketball player, learn to dribble with your left hand. If you're a musician, try to find different chords that you can use to express yourself. If you're running a business, find ways that you can excel and take your business to a new place and continue to grow. And then secondly, take the talents that you have, that you were either born with or that you've earned and developed in your life, and use them to serve the greater good in some way. And that, again, came from my family. And, for my parents, they were both teachers. And so they were doing that every day with the students that they taught, but they also felt the need to adopt myself and another son. So they had 3 kids of their own, and then they adopted myself and another son. And one time I asked my mom, this is years after I had already had my first child of my own, and I said, Mom, why is it that you guys had 3 kids, you were and you were still in college when you adopted me? Like, there were 3 kids. My mom was working on both my mom and dad were working on their master's degree. So they were living in married student housing. They had 3 kids, and they adopted me. And I'm like, who the fuck does that?
Yeah, seriously.
What were you thinking, Mom? Come on. Like, it would be really hard for me to imagine doing that. And my mom said that someone came to church and told her that there was 190,000 children in America in need of permanent homes through adoption. And she just thought to herself that there should be no child who ever goes to bed wondering where they were going to sleep the next night. And that every child should be able to go to bed and wake up in the same bed for their whole childhood. And so she went home and she talked to my dad. I mean, it kind of makes you tear up when I think about it right now. She went home and talked to my dad and said, look, we've already got 3 kids. And I got this great idea. We're in married student housing. Why don't we adopt another one? And for whatever reason, she was able to, convince my dad. And so I feel really, just blessed and lucky. And I later met my biological parents, and my birth mother's Irish, German, and Belgian. My birth father's African American and Nottoway Indian from the mountains of Virginia. And because I was this brown baby, my mom thought that her family, or her father specifically, was so racist that he would never accept a brown child. And so she gave me up. And so that's one of the pains of my life is just I grew up in a house where even though I was adopted and they did their best to love me, my father who raised me was also an alcoholic for most of that time, and until my very final months of high school when he stopped drinking. So it wasn't really like an easy childhood to grow up in. In the house I was in, I felt very different, and I've always felt like abandoned as a person. And so part of my mission in music has been to create community. I mean, that's why I feel so strongly about that, is because I believe that everyone should feel that they belong. Everyone should feel that there is a place for them in our society, in our families, in our schools, in our neighborhoods, in our businesses. And that community sense is really why I gravitated to music, and now into running a hotel.
It's powerful, Michael. Thank you for sharing that. A sense of belonging. It seems like that's kind of what, those influences did to you. A need for that, an urge for that through your music as well. Now, speaking of other influences, are there any artists out there that you listen to that influence the way that you play?
I love pop music, and it might sound silly, but there's not a song that I listen to on the radio that I don't find something cool in. And it could be from any artist. It could be from, Michael Franti and Spearhead or Britney Spears, it really doesn't matter. And I love I don't listen to genres of music. I love songs. So it could be a great song by Johnny Cash, could be a great song by Run DMC, could be a great song by Bob Marley. But the one thing that has always resonated with me is storytelling in music, and the ability for someone to tell a story that you can also dance to is really, it's not easy to do. And when I hear those stories, like an artist like Bob Marley, who's able to do that so well, or Johnny Cash, who's able to do that so well, John Lennon, who's able to do that so well, those kinds of songs, they really live with me, and they become part of who I am, in that I listen to music as medicine. It's like I wake up if I'm pissed off, it's like I get in my car, I turn up Rage Against the Machine really loud, and I drive down the street just cranking my Rage Against the Machine and hoping that it's going to get me through feeling that whatever funk I'm in. same thing with all the other songs.
Well, Michael,
I feel like remember in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory when Mike TV turns into a billion particles and then comes back and is reformed.
Right.
That's where I was. I was like in a billion particles going up to a satellite, and here I am again. So
it happens, like this is the best we can do right now for you. Hopefully one day after we'll have a hologram, maybe some hologram concerts or something. I don't know. That might be nice.
Hey, Kevin Giacomo, is that his last name?
Yeah.
Asked if my house is filled with music, but I gravitated towards sports and ended up focusing on music. Why do I think that was? And the reason is because for me, sports was this way of getting away from my house and way of escaping. I was a tall kid, so there was all this expectations like you're going to be a basketball player, and so in some ways I found like this sense of purpose there. Like, man, I can excel at this, and I have some talent toward this, and I was kind of an awkward, gangly kid, but it was something that I could work at really hard, and it taught me discipline, and it taught me hard work, things that I later applied to everything else that I do in my life. But the thing about it for me was that I never felt like I could express what was in my heart on the basketball court. There wasn't like a lot of room for really saying what I felt. And so when I discovered punk rock in my final years of high school and then later into college, I felt this spirit there, this DIY attitude that you can just pick up a guitar or pick up whatever instrument, and through 3 chords you could say what was in your heart, and then through hip hop I felt the same thing, just turntables and rapping over instrumentals of other records that I could say what was on my mind and what was in my heart. And I found music also as a kid when I was going through challenging times. I'd just put my headphones on. My parents would be arguing in the next room and my dad was drunk. I'd like listen to music and it would take me to other places. And I would hear people expressing emotions in songs that I was like, wow, was that person like in my mind? Like I really feel what they were feeling in the song, or at least what the way that it hit me. They sounded like they understood me. And so that's why I gravitated towards music. It was that expression of emotion.
And you're able to articulate that emotion very well, kind of what you're saying with like the storytelling aspect. And then, I have a story for you just because you're kind of,
sure.
It just reminded me of well, it's Black History Month, and we kind of shared something on our team call the other day about Robert Johnson. I don't know if you know who Robert Johnson is, but famous blues player from Clarksville, Mississippi. And kind of the story goes, legend has it, he didn't really have the best guitar skills, and then disappears for a year, comes back, and is just playing like no one's ever, like better than his mentors. No one's ever heard music like this before, and it's influenced people like Jimi Hendrix, other people like that. But the thing is, Michael, what I think separates from you from Jimi Hendrix or from Robert Johnson is Robert Johnson, legend has it that he sold his soul to the devil. Whereas you have gone without sponsors. You've had to gone without trying to be somebody else that a lot of artists fall into. How did you do something like that? How do you not sell your soul to the devil and, like you say, stay human?
Well, I mean, there's always ways that you create partnerships. It doesn't matter what you do. So, my partnership that we have is with our audience mainly, and the great thing about the internet and music is during the first years when I was selling records, you actually had to make this physical thing. You had to put it in a store. People had to hear about it either through the radio or through some other thing. And then they have to go to the store and purchase the record to get the music. And when we started touring as a band, as the record industry was declining because of downloads, we reached out to our audience and said, please tape our concerts and then go share them with all your friends. And so we would even allow, we'd create a space for tapers at our shows. We'd let them plug into the feed out of the mixing desk. And then they took our music and shared it online. And that's how our fan base actually grew. When record sales were declining, our fan base grew.
Huh.
And, you know, the same thing has gone on during this time of the pandemic. It's like we can't tour, so we moved everything online. I started doing more things online than I ever had before. Concerts, cameo videos for people, creating more content than we have. We're creating more music videos than we ever have for any album ever that I've ever made, and try to just find ways to engage with the fans and create community around it. And so that's it. And then we do partnerships with some brands that we feel are in alignment with what we believe in, and I license our songs into films and stuff like that. And that's, you know, unexpected income for us as an organization that is just on the top of whatever else we can do. But the main thing is that we believe in this connection with our fans. And ever since I started in music, I was a doorman at a nightclub, and in the early years. And I noticed that the bands who were invited back each year were the bands that took the time to say hello to me, the random doorman, as I'd be helping push their gear in. They'd be like, "Hey, what's up? Hey, what's your name? You know, thanks for helping with pushing our gear." And it was like, it was more than a coincidence that those bands were the ones that came back year after year. And I would see occasionally they would spend time outside their tour bus and sign a few autographs and say hello to fans or whatever. And so when I started in music, I made a commitment that after every show I was going to walk off the stage and talk to as many fans were there until we either got kicked out of the venue or they all were spoken to. And so in the years that I've been in music for 3 decades, that's how I end every show, is by walking off the stage and talking to fans. And that connection that we have is really super meaningful. And a lot of the songs that I write come from not from the stories of other people, but they come from when I identify with other people, like the song "Trying to Keep the Lights On." It, you know, I was just talking to fans who are like, "Yo, we're just trying to figure out our way to get through the pandemic. You know, I lost my job, and this person's, you know, really down and feeling bummed out, and how do we hold on to this optimism during this time?" And so the connection that we have also feeds into the way that I write songs and what I feel, because I do write songs from what breaks my heart, but I don't write them for me. I write them for my audience. And so I'm always trying to think of, you know, what is the best way to reach out. And when I was off camera, I heard you talking about, you know, the different genres that I've dabbled in music. And I just think when I write a song, I don't think like, is it a certain genre of music? I think, did these words and is this emotion, is it best served by just the acoustic guitar? Is it served by like using an orchestra, or is it served by doing an electronic music electronic music bed that will heighten that emotion? So I'm always just trying to think like a painter, like what palette am I going to use for this?
Yeah, I mean, truly an artist, and it's something that fascinates me, is that you're able to connect with people around the world. You know, not just in, you know, Berkeley, California. You know, like walk me through kind of like your activism route. Like I was listening to a song today. I think it was like "Hold Your Light Up," and you're really going into detail about what happens to these young kids when they get, you know, finessed by basically these militia armies. And I'm like, how does he know? Like, you know, so you had to be on the ground there to learn that. Like, tell our audience, you know, your passion for activism, as well as, you know, what you've learned from doing things like this.
Well, my wife and I, we have the family motto, and it's inside of our wedding rings, and it's "Be your best, serve the greater good, and rock out wherever you are." And so I kind of talked about it before, about reaching your growing edge. That's how you find yourself to be your best. Like, your best is always trying to reach your growing edge. And then applying those talents to serve the greater good. And then the final thing is that spirit of life, like rock out wherever you are, like find enthusiasm, find the joy in whatever it is that you're doing, and approach things by saying, not by saying, oh, I have to do this, but I get to do this today. I get to show up for my staff here at the hotel and have a meeting with them, and I get to, get dirty in the rice fields today, and I get to do, there's all these things that we have that add to our life. And in terms of activism, I feel like it's something that should be a part of every single person on this planet's life. We all have this planet that we're living on that we share together. And I don't want to be someone who looks back in the future and says, we were too cheap to fix the world, or we are too lazy to fix the world. We are too selfish not to look out for the needs of other people who were oppressed at the time that we were alive. Like, we don't want to look back and say that to future generations. Yet the way that we're going, we're going to have to say all those things unless all of us take it upon ourselves to be people that show up for those concerns. And so one of the things that we can all do is try to find ways that we can plug in and donate some of our time or donate some of our resources to it. 1 hour every 2 weeks or 1 hour a month, focus on something that it is that you can have influence on. And then find other people in the world or in your life that are focusing on other issues that you're concerned about, and do something to highlight their work. Whether it's through sharing social media posts, or whether it's through, just telling a friend, hey, there's somebody else who's doing something great. I think you might be interested in this. And that's what I try to do. And the great thing about songs is that I'm able to express not just specifically about specific things that are going on, but I'm able to share values. And I think that's the most important thing. Like our new album, Work Hard and Be Nice, it's about an expression of values. I want people, no matter what your political party is, no matter what your walk of life, to wake up every day and go, how can I work hard to be my best and to serve the planet through being my best? And then how can I just not trample other people on the way? How can I just be kind to other people? And if we do that, I just feel like that this world could be, changed incrementally. And one of the things that I've learned is that when we go so far to some extreme, it's like a rubber band. You pull it so tight that when you can't hold on to it anymore, you end up snapping further back the other way than if you just take small steps to become better each day. And so, for example, veganism, I've been somebody who believes in that we shouldn't be destroying forests in order to raise cattle to feed human beings meat that it eventually hurts their own bodies. And if 1 or 0.1% of us become, 100% to the, shoe to the belt vegan, then we're only getting this, we're only accomplishing this much in terms of the effect it has in the world. But if we could get every single person in the world to reduce their meat intake by 1 day, that would be 1/7 of the amount of meat that was being used. That would be 1/7 of the amount of forest that would be needed. And then eventually people could find out that this works for them, and then they go 2 days, and they go 3 days or 4 days, and they find out maybe they're living the majority of their life without eating meat, and the impact that has. And so that's just the way that and that's just an example of one thing, but I feel that way in every regard to every issue. For example, also climate change. We need the wisdom of indigenous people. We need the creativity of entrepreneurs and the just the balls of entrepreneurs to try new things. We need the cooperation of governments. We need the spending power of everyday people and the common sense of everyday people. We need all of those, the best that science has to offer in order to tackle this issue. And so all of us have a role to play in each of these issues that we see out there.
I love that. It's like sometimes those problems are just so complex. I feel like, you can't do anything. But I think what you're saying is like those small incremental changes really do build up and build on top of each other. It's just powerful advice. Now, Michael, we've talked about a lot today. You've shared wisdom, you've shared your story, you've gone deep, you've gone wide, you've gone off the show, and you've come back on the show.
I went into outer space, man.
That's right. That's right. So let's bring this home then, Michael Franti. What is your definition of a real leader?
Well, I think of someone who leads by example, and someone who's willing to take risks and do what is at first unpopular in order to take people into another direction. And I also think that as a leader, you can't always be concerned about what people are going to say about you, but you should always be concerned about the way people feel. And especially the people that are working with you, you should be concerned about how they're feeling. And I think that, as leaders in this world, which, if you're an entrepreneur, and doing something new, you are a leader. It could be a group of, one or two people. It could be, thousands of people. But we have this opportunity to create businesses that have good built into the DNA, built into the bones of the business. And that is how, really, at the end of the day, the greatest effect can be had in the world. And if we have people who are showing up in that way and saying, hey, I'm going to design this company to be something that serves something else in addition to being a for-profit company, then we can win. We can really move the needle. And the other thing is, we can't wait for governments. We can't wait for governments to be the ones to do it. They're traditionally reactive and not forward thinking, and so we've got to really have that kind of courage to speak up and to keep our eyes open, keep our hearts open, keep our ears open to what are the true needs of the planet today.
Powerful words there. Right there, Michael. Thank you so much for coming on the Real Leaders Podcast today. Hope you stick around for a few questions. But for Michael Franti, I'm Kevin Edwards, asking you to go out there, serve a higher purpose more than yourself, and always, folks, keep it real. Thanks, Michael.
Right on.